They called her invincible. From red carpets to Forbes covers, Eleanor Vance was the embodiment of triumph, a name synonymous with elegance, wealth, and out of untouchable prestige. With her cascading platinum hair, poise is smile, in the unmistakable gleam of control in her eyes, she wasn't just admired, she was worshipped. Eleanor's empire sprawled across industries, real estate, fashion, tech startups, each venture golden thread in the tapestry of her immaculate success. Till the world, she was a self-magicker. But perfection, as the saying goes, is often the most convincing disguise for chaos. Eleanor's life played out in snapshots, photoshoots in Parisian penthouses, strategic interviews, where she used confidence, incalculated vulnerability, exclusive galas where she always arrived fashionably late, dazzling and alone. She was a mystery, one that the media adored. No time for distractions, she once quipped in an interview, when asked about family, "Business is my only child." Each was a line quoted in tabloids, admired by aspiring moguls, and adopted as gospel by her fuzz. But behind the closed gates of her hilltop estate, reality whispered a far more twisted tale. There were no toys in her sprawling Beverly Hills mansion, no scribbles on the walls or forgotten juice boxes on marble countertops. Eleanor's house was a cathedral to discipline, white, sterile, precise. Staff were instructed never to enter certain rooms. Windows remained permanently draped. Visitors were vetted, timed, watched. Each was as though Eleanor had something to hide, something delicate and dangerous that could unravel everything if exposed. Still, no one suspected a thing. The illusion held. She had mastered the art of distraction. Each business launch was timed perfectly to drown out scrutiny. When whispers emerged about her early life, her mysterious disappearance for 6 months at the peak of her career, a carefully crafted charity initiative would surface, redirecting public gaze. When her lovers hinted at secrets she carried like scars, she'd appear at a gala with a new award in hand, glowing couture, untouchable again. Even her closest allies never questioned the silence surrounding her personal life. They accepted her boundaries, maybe because they were too dazzled by the power she wielded, maybe because deep down, they feared what they might find if they pulled at the wrong thread. But those threads were fraying. Some staff noticed the tension, the sudden eruptions behind closed doors, the visits from a private doctor who never used the front gate, the muffled sobs echoing from the east wing latch at night. Still, Eleanor paid generously. And when she paid, people forgot things, details, suspicions, timelines. Till the outside world, Eleanor Vance was a fortress. A woman who had sacrificed companionship for conquest. A billionaire who didn't need love, who had outgrown sentimentality. Her narrative was clean, empowering, inspiring. And so no one asked the question that could have changed everything. No one asked, was she ever a mother? Had they looked closer, they might have seen the fatigue in her smile, the way her eyes darted toward unseen ghosts during interviews. They might have questioned why her estate's eastern side remained forever unlit, or why she kept a photograph cropped and faded in the locked drawer of her study, never displayed but never discarded. But the world doesn't question its idols until they fall. Eleanor had built her kingdom on silence, beautiful, impenetrable silence. Until one day, long before the media storm, before the world questioned the untouchable facade of Eleanor Vance, there were whispers, faint, ignored, and quickly silenced. They lived in the margins of her story, like smudges on an otherwise pristine canvas. Only those who worked behind the gates of her estate ever heard them. Only those who were paid to stay silent ever knew the truth had already begun to leak. Her mansion, while a fortress of white marble in designed austerity, had a pulsy rhythm of secrets humming beneath the polished floors. The staff felt it, especially those who had been there long enough to notice the things that didn't add up, like the locked east wing, where deliveries would arrive late at night, books, clothes, medications, yet no one ever entered or exited through that side of the house. Or the odd grocery requests, two of everything always in pairs, but only one plate sat at the table for meals. Or how the security team, normally distant and professional, would occasionally break formation and hush new employees, their warnings, laced with a hint of fear rather than formality. Among them, Maria stood out, a kind, middle-aged housekeeper who'd been with Eleanor since the early days. She had seen things, and she had heard things. One night, over coffee with a former colleague, she let something slip. There was a child, she said quietly, eyes darting. Not a baby, not a guest, someone, hidden. Her voice trembled as she spoke, as though saying each aloud might summon trouble, but the words had already been spoken. The rumor, like a virus, spread, first among the night staff, then to the temporary hires. Eventually, it reached someone who didn't forget. Maria was gone within the week, fired, officially, for breach of conduct, unofficially, for opening a door that was meant to remain shut. No explanation was given, no severance package, just a non-disclosure agreement and a warning. Forget what you think you heard, for your own good. But Maria's absence only fed the story. Others began to reflect on their own observations. A former gardener recalled seeing a young girl once, latching in the evening, behind the upstairs window, just a flicker of movement, a silhouette. At the time, he thought he imagined it. But now, he wasn't so sure. Another staff member, a chef, remembered how Eleanor would sometimes request specific meals, comfort food, in small portions, that insist they be delivered without asking who would eat them. She never touched the dishes herself, yet someone did. The plates returned empty, but were never brought till the dining room. It was the security team, though, that held the tightest grip on the truth. Trained, loyal, and handsomely compensated, they patrolled not just the perimeter but the narrative. When new staff asked questions, they were met with dead stares. When they stopped, they were fired. One guard, who left the job after a year, later confided a friend that something felt wrong in that house, like we were protecting a secret, not a person. He was right. Still, no one dared go public. Eleanor's influence stretched far. Her legal team was as ruthless as her business acumen. Rumors could destroy lives, but for now, they remained contained, swirling like dust under a locked door. But secrets, especially those fed by silence, have a way of growing restless. The first real breach came not from the staff, but from outside. A curious freelance journalist, digging through Eleanor's early records for a retrospective feature, noticed a 6-month disappearance from the spotlight. No interviews, no public appearances, no business moves, just silence. She reached out to a former publicist who had once represented Eleanor during the team. She was gone, the woman admitted. Someplace remote, said she needed rest, but when she came back, she was different, hardened, paranoid. The change had never been explained. Until now, it had been overlooked as the evolution of a woman carving her path through the cutthroat world of business. But now, it raised a question: what had really happened during those 6 months? What or who was Eleanor hiding? The whispers behind the curtains were no longer just noise. They were voices, questions, doubts, and they were getting louder. The hidden truth: who is the girl? For years, she was just a shadow, an unnamed presence that haunted the east wing of Eleanor Vance's estate. The world didn't know her. Even those who worked under the same roof didn't say her name. But secrets, no matter how deep they buried, don't stay buried forever. Either secret had a name, a face, a story screaming to be told. It began with a break in the dam. A group of investigative journalists, intrigued by the rumors surrounding Eleanor, had been quietly collecting fragments of the puzzle: anonymous testimonies, tax records, property acquisitions. But each was a single document that changed everything. A school enrollment form filed over a decade ago, under a pseudonym, in a tiny private institution miles from the nearest town. The name listed was Nite Vance. It was a fabricated surname attached to a girl enrolled as a ward of a private guardian. But what caught the eye of the lead investigator was the emergency contact information, an untraceable phone number that, with enough digging, was linked to a prepaid account funded indirectly by one of Eleanor's lesser-known holding companies. That S. When they knew, the girl wasn't just a rumor. She was real. The team managed to locate her. Today, she is 17. Her name, at least the one she grew up with, is Ava Wren. She lives in a state-funded shelter for displaced minors, transferred there 2 years ago after her previous caretaker vanished under suspicious circumstances. She has no known relatives, no visitors, no history that makes sense. But when they approached her with questions, she didn't run, she didn't cry, she asked them something instead. Did she send you? It was the first crack in her own silence. Foam. There, the story unfolded like a wound slow, painful, and impossible to ignore. Ava spoke hesitantly at first, as if unsure whether she was allowed to, but the more she spoke, the clearer the picture became. She remembered the house, not all of it, but pieces, the coldness of the floors, the strict schedules, the feeling of being invisible. She remembered a woman tall, poised, distant. She didn't call her mom. She wasn't allowed to. She was afraid of me, Ava said. Oh, what I meant. When the journalists obtained a DNA sample with her consent, they sent it to a private laboratory. The results were undeniable. Ava Wren is the biological daughter of Eleanor Vance. The revelation sent shockwaves through the team. They now held proof that one of the world's most revered public figures had hidden a child for nearly 2 decades. Not abandoned, hidden, deliberately erased from her narrative. But there was only half the mystery. The rest lay in understanding. Why? Who would Eleanor need to protect herself from? What was so dangerous about the truth that she would go to such lengths to suppress it? And how had Ava ended up alone, discarded like a loose thread that no longer served its purpose? Digging further, the journalists uncovered a hidden financial trail: monthly deposits, matched to an unregistered caregiver, funneled through offshore accounts, payments that stopped abruptly 2 years ago. Around the same time Ava was placed in the shelter. When asked about that person, Ava's face darkened. He wasn't her family, she said. He said he worked for her, but he never let me call her, never said her name. She didn't know she had a mother, not really. All she had was a memory of a woman in white, standing at the end of a hallway, watching her with eyes that never softened, a presence that loomed more than each embraced. And yet, when she saw Eleanor's face on a magazine cover for the first time, something clicked. I knew, she whispered. I didn't know how, but I knew. She kept the page, hid it in her pillowcase, stared at it for hours, night after night, waiting for answers that never came. Until now, the story exploded. Olay. News outlets scrambled to confirm the findings. Talk shows speculated wildly. Comment sections overflowed with disbelief, outrage, and conspiracy theories. But no one denied the truth anymore. The girl was real. Eleanor Vance had lied to the world. But Ava had just begun to find her voice. And the world was finally listening. Why she was didn't understand why Eleanor Vance buried her daughter's existence beneath layers of wealth, power, and control. One must step back far beyond the designer gowns and glowing headlines. Back to a time when her empire was nothing more than a fragile dream, vulnerable to the cruel winds of public opinion. Back to when one mistake could ruin everything she had fought to build. It was the late spring of 2007. Eleanor was at the cusp of global stardom. Her fashion line had just exploded into the European market. A string of luxury properties in New York and Dubai were generating millions in impresarios. Her image, sharp, commanding, flawless, was being molded into a brand, and the media didn't get enough of her. Every headline sang the same chorus: the new queen of modern power. But behind closed doors, her life was unraveling. His name was Darren Colton, a real estate developer with charm, connections, well-documented affinity for trouble. Eleanor met him at a fundraiser, one of those overpriced galas where fortunes mingle under chandeliers and secrets are exchanged with champagne. He was bold, persuasive. She was flattered, if only for a moment. They were never in love, not really. But what began as a fleeting affair soon spiraled into something far more complicated. Darren was reckless gambling, illicit dealings, scandals whispered behind boardroom doors. And Eleanor, in a rare lapse of judgment, didn't walk away. Then came the pregnancy. It was a storm she hadn't prepared for. Her advisors begged her to consider the implications. You hear about to launch in Tokyo. This could cost you everything. One of them warned. But it wasn't the business deals Eleanor feared losing. It was the narrative. She had spent years constructing a myth around herself. The independent visionary, the woman who needed no one, who rose without help, who conquered without compromise. A child, especially with a man like Darren, didn't fit into that equation. It wasn't just inconvenient. It was dangerous. In Darren, he wasn't interested in being a father. When she told him, his reaction was swift and venomous. You think anyone will take you seriously when they find out you? He knocked up By a guy like me, he laughed. Then he threatened to go public, threatened to drag her name through the mud, threatened to use the child as leverage. Eleanor, terrified of losing everything, did the only thing she could think of. She vanished. For 6 months, she disappeared from the public eye, retreating to a private estate in Switzerland under an alias. No press, no photos, just silence. Eva was born there, in the quiet of a hidden clinic where the staff signed their loyalty in ink and blood. Eleanor never held her, never looked into her eyes. The decision had already been made. She would not be a mother. Instead, she arranged for Eva to be raised in secrecy, under the care of a handler whose identity was buried behind shell companies and offshore trusts. Eleanor funded everything: private schooling, medical care, shelter, but never visited, never called, never acknowledged her existence, because Eva wasn't just a child. She was a threat, a living contradiction to Eleanor's public persona. Proof that her eyes hadn't been immaculate, evidence that even the most powerful women can bleed. So Eleanor catched that part of herself off like a gangrenous limb. Each was survival, each was cruelty, each was both. Years passed. Eleanor rose higher, wealthier, colder. And Eva remained in the shadows, an unspoken debt that grew heavier with every award Eleanor received, every cavar she graced. But secrets have a weight. Even the strongest backs eventually bend. Eleanor had spent her life navigating scandals, lawsuits, betrayals, hostile takeovers. But nothing had ever terrified her like the thought of Eva stepping into the light. Because if she did, the world would ask questions. About Doran, about the child who was never supposed to exist, about the woman behind the empire. And for the first time, Eleanor wouldn't have the answers. She had rewritten her story to many times. The truth no longer had a place in it. But the truth doesn't need permission. It simply waits, and then it arrives. The mistake that exposed the victim for 17 years, Eleanor Vance controlled the narrative. Every whisper, every shadow, every trace of the past managed, buried, or erased with ruthless precision. She had built a kingdom not just of money, but of image. She believed she had perfected the art of concealment, but it wasn't a scandal, or a betrayal, or a confession that shattered the silence. It was a photograph. A single, forgotten photograph, old, tagged, uploaded without fanfare, to a decade-old travel blog by a long-retired yacht captain. It showed the deck of a luxury vessel off the coast of Capri, with sunlight spilling across the water like liquid gold. In the corner, barely noticeable, a little girl, maybe 6 years old, wind-blown hair, clutching a stuffed rabbit, her face turned slightly toward the camera. She was laughing. Till most, it was just a candid moment from a lavish vacation. But the algorithms didn't care about context. They cared about patterns, about faces. Within hours, facial recognition technology flagged the image. The girl's features matched recent photos from a shelter intake record under the name Eva Wren. The system made the connection. The program pinged a notification. A blogger noticed the anomaly. Then a data archivist. Then a digital sleuth on a private forum devoted to celebrity mysteries. Within 48 hours, the photo spread like wildfire. People began to ask, who was the child on Eleanor Vance's yacht a decade ago? And why did she look so much like the girl in the shelter? The internet went to work. Forum threads dissected every detail: timestamps, yacht logs, staff records, known movements of Eleanor's inner circle. Independent investigators pulled satellite data in social media archives. One journalist tracked down the original photographer, who confirmed the image was taken on a private charter funded by a holding company linked to Vance Industries. Then came the confirmation that couldn't be disputed. A new facial recognition match, independently verified, declared a 987% likelihood that the girl in the photo was Eva Wren. The implication was clear. Eleanor Vance had a daughter, and she had lied. The media eruption was immediate and merciless. What began as speculation turned to headlines. The Vance secret, hidden daughter confirmed. Billionaire heiress in the shadows. Why did Eleanor hide her child? Eleanor tried to shut it down. Her legal team issued denials. Her publicists demanded retractions. Social media accounts posted vague statements about privacy violations and dangerous misinformation. But it was too late. The internet had tasted blood. Each wanted the whole story. Paparazzi swarmed the shelter where Eva lived. Journalists camped outside the gates of Millionaire's estate. Former employees semi-silenced furios began to talk. Anonymous sources surfaced. Old photographs were scrutinized. Patterns emerged. A timeline took shape. Eva, despite the chaos, remained mostly silent, until she was Nite, a journalist, an older woman with gentle eyes and a reputation for empathy, approached her with care. No cameras, no pressure, just questions. And for the first time, Eva answered. She never called me by name, she said, but I remember her voice. It was Nite warm. Her story echoed what others had feared. The hidden wing, the secrecy, the handler who vanished, the photos torn up, the promises unkept. I thought maybe I was a mistake, or maybe I made her ashamed. When those words hit the public, they shadowed something fundamental in the way people saw Eleanor. The admiration turned, the pedestal cracked, sponsors withdrew, a major cosmetics brand cut ties overnight. A tech partner released a cold, impersonal statement distancing their company from the ongoing controversy. Stock prices for Vans Holdings dipped for the first time in 4 years. In the eye of the storm, Eleanor stayed silent. She refused interviews, canceled appearances, retreated behind the high walls of her mansion, where silence had once been her shield but now felt like a cage. Because this time, the silence was not protecting her, it was betraying her. All because of one photo, one moment, one careless oversight. 17 years of control and done a heartbeat. In somewhere, a shelter far from the mansions in magazine covers, a young girl watched the world discover her truth piece by painful piece. She had never been meant to be seen, but now, she couldn't be unseen. Confrontation and consequences to silence was over. After weeks of frenzied headlines and damning revelations, the world no longer accepted statements from lawyers or carefully crafted tweets from Millionaire's PR team. They wanted her to speak, but more than that, they wanted the girl to speak. The daughter hidden, forgotten, denied. And she did. It was not a press conference. It was not an exclusive magazine interview with flattering lighting and scripted answers. It was a video, uploaded quietly to a public platform by a user with no profile picture, no bio, just one post. A video of Eva, seated in a modest room, her voice quiet but resolute. Eva began. You didn't ask to be born. You didn't ask to be hidden. You didn't ask for any of this. She didn't cry. She didn't dramatize. She simply told the truth. Layer by painful layer. She spoke about her childhood not with venom, but with aching distance. How she was always kept indoors. How every window had curtains that never opened. How she was told not to make noise when the lady was home. How she wasn't allowed to have friends, or toys, or questions. She remembered her caregiver strict, mechanical, distant. He never said her name, she explained, but he always acted like I was someone else's problem. She described birthdays alone, watching cartoons on mute. She described asking just once if she had a mother. How that question earned her silence for an entire week. Then she told the world what broke her. The day she saw Eleanor's face on a magazine, smiling like the past never existed. She was on the cover, Eva said, smiling, beautiful. I was sitting on a bunk bed in a shelter, wondering if I had done something wrong. The video went viral. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't produced. But it was real. A real is something the world clings to in a storm of deceit. Public reaction was swift and brutal. Celebrities who once praised Eleanor now fell silent. Influencers posted vague stories about truth and accountability. Advocacy groups condemned the abandonment. And millions of viewers flooded Eva's video with support, sympathy, and disbelief. But the real earthquake came when sponsors pulled out of live contracts. Not just fashion and tech, but entire partnerships dissolved overnight. Her media streaming deal was cancelled. Her brand licensing deals were suspended. Even board members from her own companies began distancing themselves from her leadership. Behind her estate walls, Eleanor faced a reckoning she had long feared but never truly believed would come. Her lawyers advised silence. Her advisors begged for damage control. But what they didn't understand was this. The damage wasn't in the narrative. It was in the betrayal. The betrayal of a child, locked away from the world. of the public, fed a lie for nearly 2 decades, of herself because Eleanor had long since abandoned the last part of her that was capable of love, remorse, or truth. But it was not just Eleanor who paid the price. Eva, despite the outpouring of support, faced her own avalanche. Strangers calling her brave, critics accusing her of exploiting the story, journalists hounding her for exclusive interviews, offers of book deals, documentary rights, transmissão vertical dramatizations. Overnight, she became both a symbol and a target. In all she had wanted was to be seen, to be acknowledged, to exist. She rejected the deals, declined the invitations. She kept her distance, because this was not about fame. This was about healing. But healing requires confrontation. A confrontation came. Eleanor, pressured by falling markets, a fractured public, a daughter who no longer needed her, finally emerged, not on television, not in an apology post, but at a private location undisclosed, unannounced, where she met Eva face to face for the first time in over a decade. No cameras, no scripts, just silence, and two people staring at the wreckage of a truth too long denied. What was said between them remains unknown. Neither party has spoken of that meeting, but sources say Eleanor left in tears. Em Eva de dignité, in the weeks that followed, Eleanor's grip on her empire loosened. She stepped off foam board seats, released controlling chairs, retreated into the background, the spotlight now a heat she could no longer withstand. Her image, once flawless, was now fractured, not entirely destroyed, but reshaped. Not the queen of modern power, just a woman who made a choice, a girl who paid the price. Epilogue: can the past be forgiven? The storm had passed, not in the way storms usually pass, quick, violent, and then gone, but either way grief settles into silence. The noise faded, the headlines moved on, and the world found new scandals to devour. But for Eleanor Vance and Eva Wren, the aftermath was just beginning. They had met, not in front of cameras, not with a publicist nearby, just the two of them, mother and daughter, finally in the same room, breathing the same air, surrounded by years of absence that no apology could fill. What was said in that room has never been disclosed, but its echoes remain. Eva de dignité, post again after her video. Not once, no interviews, no updates, no responses till the flood of messages that poured into her inbox. She vanished quietly, purposefully, as if she had told the world what it needed to hear. He now wanted only peace. Some say she traveled abroad. Others claim she entered a private program for survivors of childhood trauma. A few whispers say Eleanor funded the journey not as penance but as protection. If that is true, Eva never confirmed it, and Eleanor never boasted. Eleanor, though, stepped out of the spotlight. She sold one of her companies, resigned from 2 others, and liquidated several assets with little explanation. The woman who once held press conferences in diamond-laced gowns now lived in near isolation, spotted only a handful of chums leaving therapy clinics or walking alone through unfamiliar cities. But the question that lingers isn't what they did after. It is whether the past can ever be undone. Can a mother who denied her child ever deserve forgiveness? Can a child who was hidden, ignored, and treated like a liability ever choose mercy? The internet has answers, millions of them, but none matter more than the ones the two of them carry, because forgiveness isn't a headline. It is a decision, a painful, personal, fragile decision. And maybe, just maybe, they found it, if only in fragments. Maybe Eleanor held her daughter's hand for the first time in 17 years and whispered a name she never dared say before. Maybe Eva let her. Maybe she didn't. We don't know. But it is what we do know. The truth came out. Not because someone wanted revenge. Not because someone wanted fame. But because the truth waits. It doesn't disappear when you bury it. It doesn't die when you ignore it. It waits quiet, patient, unforgiving until the moment it no longer can. And when it rises, it changes everything. Eleanor Vance built an empire on silence. But in the end, it was a whisper that brought it though. One photograph, one mistake, one girl who wouldn't stay hidden. Now, the world remembers Eleanor not just as the billionaire visionary, the fashion mogul, the strategic queen of control, but as the woman who ran from her own reflection, only to have that reflection stare back in the form of a child she once chose to forget. Eva, she is no longer a shadow. She is a name, a voice, a truth that refused to stay buried. So ask yourself, if the life you built depended on a lie, would you keep it? Or would you let it all burn just to finally be free? Tell us in the comments, can the past truly be forgiven? Final statement. The silence we choose are stories we tell the world, then there are stories we bury. Millionaire Vance taught us that wealth can build walls high enough to keep out your judgment, but never high enough to keep out your truth. She taught us that image is a fragile currency, and the cost of keeping it becomes a child's silence. Even the richest among us must eventually pay. But the story was never just about Millionaire. It was about Ava, about every child who was hidden to protect a legacy. Every voice that was silenced to preserve your reputation. Every truth that was ignored because it was inconvenient. In Ava's defiance, we saw something raw and unshakable, the need to be acknowledged, to be heard, to matter. And so we ask you, now, not just to reflect, but to respond. Do you believe Millionaire deserves forgiveness? Does power justify the lies we tell to preserve it? And what would you choose, truth or protection? Let us know in the comments. Share your thoughts, your anger, your empathy. This story does not end here, it continues every time we choose to speak up. Every time we choose not to stay silent. Because silence is a choice. And the past always finds a way back.